Hey, how are you? Matt Heisler here, Inside Real Estate with another video. So it won't be too much longer, at least we've been promised that, before a new law takes effect and will affect all the residential purchase transactions that happen in Massachusetts. And this law was buried in a bigger housing bill that Maura Healey signed into law last summer. And what this has to do with is it has to do with home inspections. And in order to talk about this a little bit, we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine to 6 or 7 years ago, pre-pandemic, where I will tell you that basically when you were listed a house, it was very common to get home inspections. In fact, I would say like 98% of all deals went through with home inspections. So, and the reason they went through is because home inspections are a relatively simple process. I know sellers worry about them that there's things are going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars in order to get fixed, and the home inspection is going to reveal all these terrible things. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff that comes up in home inspections would come up at every house, and your house isn't any different than the other houses that you are pricing at. And most of the time, we can negotiate very successful, very cost-effective solutions for those home inspections. Even in the cases where we don't, the buyer is much more likely to proceed with the transaction because he doesn't find out that stuff on his own and someone else is telling him what's wrong and what's good and everything else. Overall, home inspections are a very good thing. And as a rule, real estate agents put them in their offers pretty religiously. And if you were on the listing side, you didn't really make a big fuss about having a home inspection because everyone asked for one. It was just sort of there. Pandemic hit and the entire real estate market changed, and people started fighting over the very limited inventory that was out there. And as the prices climbed, one of the things that people did to make their offers more competitive so that they didn't have to keep paying more money, right, was they started eliminating their home inspections. This does make your offer more attractive to the seller. And it was a trick that a lot of us knew about, but we didn't use very often because most of the time when you're switching houses, you want the buyer to have a home inspection. The main reason you want a buyer to have a home inspection is so that he has a lot of confidence about what he's buying. But the secondary reason that you want a buyer to have a home inspection is because you're trying to protect him from a very small number of things that are very, very expensive to fix. And these things do pop up from time to time. And when they pop up, you are very, very happy that you've had the inspection. It's very similar to health insurance or any other kind of insurance where most of the time you don't really need it. You don't really like paying for it. But when you do need it because you have a six-figure problem, then you're very happy that you have the insurance because you're going to be able to survive that experience financially. When you buy a house without an inspection, there are a few people out there who are going to end up in just a world of financial hurt and where they could either get wiped out or dig a hole so deep that they never get out of it. And that's a really terrible, terrible thing. Despite that risk, it became pretty commonplace for agents of all stripes, new and old, to eliminate home inspections as part of their offers. This never made a lot of sense to me, and as a rule, I didn't recommend it to any of my buyers because for the most part, you can buy your way out of the home inspection clause. Most listing agents know that a home inspection isn't likely to result in a really large number of things that need to be fixed. And there are all sorts of ways that you can limit the home inspection. Just because you're not going to argue very much over what the home inspection uncovers, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't have one. You absolutely should. So if you're out there buying in this market, you should absolutely have an inspection. Apparently, I'm not the only one that feels this way because what the state did, and the point of this video, is that they've made it a law, and that law is supposed to go into effect this year in 2025, supposedly sometime in June or July, depending on how the statute reads, and they keep offering extensions. So we don't really know, but when it goes into effect, sellers will no longer be able to accept an offer where the home inspection is waived. Now, this seems like kind of a backward way to do it. The person who gets penalized for accepting an offer where the home inspection is waived is the seller. But I think that's where the lawyers came down that it was the easiest place to try and fix it was to keep the sellers from accepting it as opposed to keeping the buyers from writing it. Now, from a practical standpoint, this doesn't make a huge difference. I mean, if I had an offer and the buyer was willing to waive the home inspection, I would just tell the listing, but it was still the best offer. I would tell the listing agent to go back, put the home inspection clause back in there. The buyer doesn't have to have a home inspection, but I would make sure that the paperwork said that he could have a home inspection because that is exactly what the law requires. And so there's been a lot of noise out there from other real estate agents that say that this is a freedom of choice issue, that if the buyers want to eliminate their home inspection, that they should be able to do that. I have to tell you, after doing real estate for as long as I have, I don't really think that is a good position to have at all. The problem is the vast majority of buyers, well over 90% of them, don't really understand the kinds of risks, kinds of things that can go wrong if they're not having a home inspection. And they really don't understand that. And if they end up in a situation where they buy a house, and believe me, this is going to happen. I've already seen a couple of news articles, but there will be more. Okay. If buyers buy houses without home inspections and it ends up that they have, a five-figure or a six-figure problem, they're going to sue. They're going to be very unhappy about it. They're going to feel like they were misled and lied to, and they're going to sue everybody within reach. So who are they going to sue? Well, they're going to sue their buyer agent for recommending that they not proceed without a home inspection, right? That's the first person that's going to get sued. So the buyer agent and the buyer agency, they're going to get sued. The second person who's going to get sued is the seller. And the next person that's going to get sued is the seller's agent and the listing agent. Because the natural thing to assume, I think, for what a lot of the buyers are going to do, or the now owners and former buyers, is they're going to assume that the seller and the listing agent were engaged in a broad cover up and took an offer where the home inspection was waived because that way nothing would get found and they could bury this issue. So I certainly hope no listing agents and no sellers had specifically planned to bury important material issues that they knew about, because that would be grossly illegal. That is a violation of the law, of the real estate laws in Massachusetts. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So those people should definitely get sued. But having said that, what we really want here is we don't want anybody to get sued. And we don't want people buying houses that have five-figure or six-figure problems that they don't know about. So I'm not the only one who obviously believes this, because what the law says is that sellers can't accept an offer where the buyer has agreed to waive the home inspection. So I think without too much thought, based on sort of the overview that I've gone here, that home inspections are a very positive thing for buyers to do. And this law, in theory, allows everyone to get a home inspection, not necessarily as a condition of their sale, but really as a right of buying another property. And so I think from a consumer protection point of view, this is a very, very good thing to do. And I don't think the state would have stepped in here and done this except so many agents and so many buyers were waiving their home inspection. And I think they know that there's going to be this wave of lawsuits. And what they're really trying to do is just prevent any more. So they're a little late to the party with this statute, but they're here to do it. Now you're going to hear from the other side. There are really, it kind of surprises me, but there are other real estate agents and other agencies out there that say that this denies buyers a certain amount of freedom in structuring their offer and everything else. And, it does. It does. So the question here is whether or not the restriction of personal freedoms from the buyer side and in a desire to make their offer competitive, is it worth the consumer protection that you get out of it? And the way I come down on this is that I don't think the buyers are really as knowledgeable about the things that they are giving up when they give up a home inspection. I don't think they really understand the risk. I mean, for example, if they bought a house and it had pyrite in the foundation, which basically means that the house is going to have to be lifted up off the foundation. The foundation is going to have to be torn down, and you're going to have to pour a new foundation and then put the house back down on that new foundation. That's a six-figure problem. And that stuff is out there. And most buyers cannot, first of all, most buyers don't even know about it, right? I mean, if this is the first time you've heard the word pyrite, then you didn't know about it either. And if they did know about it, they don't know how to look for it, right? They wouldn't know how to identify that that foundation is in trouble. So, and that stuff is around here. And in different states, there are different problems that are six-figure problems. Like, I don't think anyone wants to waive an inspection on a well and find out that they had arsenic in their water 15 years after they lived in the house. I don't think that that's very good. I don't think that's what real estate agents should be in the business of doing, which is covering up the risk that's involved in certain houses. Whatever's wrong with a house, it can be fixed. But there's no reason that we should be kicking the can down the road and hoping somebody else ends up unlucky by buying that property for not doing their due diligence. So I really just don't think that buyers are, and I'm sure there are exceptions, but minus the few exceptions, most buyers are just not in a situation where they really understand the full scope of the risks that they're taking on, and they should always do an inspection. Now, the law won't make you do an inspection. You cannot do one, but at least now on the offer, you will have the right to do an inspection. So, I'm not really sure why a lot of agencies say that this is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I think people having faith in the process and buying stuff ultimately is good for everyone. I think trying to hide things from the consumer is a very bad thing to do. And unfortunately, that's what waiving the inspection does for way too many situations. For folks that waived a home inspection and nothing went wrong, great for you. But, you know, I don't want to say that you lucked out. I mean, the odds were in your favor, but just because the odds were in your favor doesn't mean everybody should have to take that risk. Because some people are going to find out it was a very, very expensive risk to take. So that's it for Inside Real Estate. I look forward to the new law being put into place. I think it will ultimately encourage buyers to be more aggressive about certain properties, and I think that's good for everyone. Until next time.